Fabian Picardo opened Parliament by saying the time the House had not met will be one that will be talked about for many years to come. He said this emergency is probably the highest gear in which a peacetime government has had to operate, with such dire estimates of potential casualties that Gibraltar was on the cusp of a government of national unity.
If the worst of the events we had been told to expect had come to pass, we would today likely be sitting in government together. I had cleared with His Excellency the Governor, and I think it is important to record in this House, and had communicated to the Leader of the Opposition that a proper interpretation of the Constitution permitted the appointment of 10 ministers alongside a Chief Minister. I was therefore able to bring Mr. Azopardi in as a minister without having to remove one of the existing portfolio holders. We were close, but in the end, it was happily not necessary. Not because we would not have been able to work together, but because we did not see the worst materialize. And we found, Mr. Speaker, also a way of working together without that final step. We were, I think, both pleased to have been able to avoid crossing that Rubicon, but it's an illustration of just how dangerous the position potentially was.
Mr. Picardo said a new Unlock the Rock document will be issued in early July to cover the process to come after the 1st of August, and he anticipated a final instalment from Task Force Future, with more measures being announced for businesses beyond the 30th of June. The Chief Minister warned, however, that what lay ahead may be even more daunting than what is behind. He said we need to move away from the comfortable and to stretch ourselves, concluding that this had been a time of great strain for the community, but also a time of great success.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Mr. Ligudi, when he was in your chair, as we rose to adjourn sine die, told us last time that COVID was the battle that we faced, and it was a battle we will win. 12 weeks on, Mr. Speaker, we're ahead on points.
For his part, the Leader of the Opposition said the Shadow Cabinet took an early view that it was necessary to cooperate with Number 6 during the emergency. He said for a time he was in daily contact with the Chief Minister, and had the offer to form a government of national unity come, it would have been considered by his party.
There is a big distinction between what I believe we have done over the last 80 days, which is the politics of cooperation, and the politics of unity. There is a big difference between a government of national unity, where you accept an offer. First, the offer has to be tendered, then it has to be accepted, and then you, in effect, merge into the executive and you accept the collective responsibility of that because you are a member of that government. We have not done that. We have had the politics of cooperation and the public interest, always reserving the right to disagree, always reserving the right to disagree publicly.
However, the GSD leader said this was only the first phase, and it is important not to chant victory now, adding we are not there yet. The proof, he said, was in Parliament today, where he remarked on the different backbenches to the ones he had envisaged, as social distancing measures saw 2 rows of MPs sitting at each side of the House. Nevertheless, Mr. Azopardi said it was important that the government's messages were clear and consistent, noting this had not been the case on the issue of bathing at the beaches.
I went for a walk to Sandy Bay on Saturday, and I zealously wanted to be very careful that I stuck to the public health advice, so I actually timed myself on the stopwatch. I got engaged into a conversation with someone when I was on the sand, and it took so long that by that time I looked at my watch and I was on 27 minutes. I hadn't had time to even take my shoes off. So I then left the beach in accordance with the public health advice. But I have to say to him that there was at least one member of the government there in his shorts wading in the sea. And so I think it's important that we all follow that indeed, you know, if the advice is 30 minutes, it's okay. But we shouldn't say irresponsible, because that confuses people, that's all.
While Mr. Azopardi acknowledged what he called the government's positive tone with the GSD, he said normal politics politics will return soon enough, evident, he revealed, by the decreased level of engagement with Number 6. Meanwhile, Together Gibraltar leader Marlene Hassan Nahon said her party had suffered after being banished from the COVID emergency cabinet meetings. She said having won the vote of 20.5% of the electorate, in her opinion, democracy had not been served.
A crisis such as this pandemic calls for heightened awareness, maximum representation and scrutiny to ensure the common good. My party suffered as a consequence being left out of many cross-party briefings and meetings between the government and the opposition. The 20+% of the electorate that entrusted me and my party to defend their interest was left banished from the discussions on the management of the pandemic, a move that sadly, or maybe even conveniently, was never protested by the official leader of the opposition. All the while, government professing the importance of not playing party politics. This does not reflect a truly strong, constructive and representative parliament.
Nevertheless, Ms Hassan Nahon said Gibraltar's handling of the pandemic was something to be proud of, adding her party has made a humble and meaningful contribution. The Together Gibraltar leader said, however, that the current unlocking strategy feels as though it's beginning to fall apart because of mixed messaging and lack of enforcement. Ms Hassan Nahon remarked that politicians need to lead by example and stressed we are unprepared to continue living with a deadly virus that is still among us. However, she invited the government to engage with her and said she would roll up her sleeves when needed to help the community through this crisis.